Welcome to the Narrow Road podcast.
Where curiosity meets conviction. Join us today as we explore faith and many life's tough questions.
So, Mafa, in our last conversation,
Yes.
we were speaking about, creation myths and all of that, the different ones that exist. We spoke about how, according to a lot of oral, teachings and all of that across many cultures,
Yes.
African cultures also involved,
Mm.
what we see generally as a theme is that there is a God
Mm.
or gods
Yes.
that created mankind.
Yes.
Most likely, the people that were created first was one man and one woman,
Mhm.
right? And the rest of the humanity
Mhm.
came from those two people.
Yes.
And also, we saw a common theme coming out in the sense that it looks like the people that were created from clay,
Mhm.
right? And this
Yeah,
is
right.
yeah, and what we essentially said that despite the fact that this is all contained in the Bible,
Mm.
but we can see that type of similar theme across many of these other oral traditions, archaeological finds that we found that explain, certain creation stories and all of that. Yes, there are those that have got, a very different story altogether. But I mean, in every situation, you always find outliers. Right?
Yes, yes,
But
that's
we
right.
try and narrow to where the majority, goes into, and I think those are the things that we narrowed down on
Yes.
the last time.
Mhm.
And I also think that from our conversation last time, we said we've already established that, okay, there's a good chance that there were two people that were created. Let's call them Adam and Eve. You can
Yes.
call them,
Mm.
Tabo and Lerato. Doesn't matter what the names were.
Yes.
But now they find themselves in a place, it was also one of the things that we discussed, that initially they were living in communion with their creator.
Yes.
And because of their rebellion, they were separated from their creator. And it looks like where they used to live with their creator was considered to be a place that was elevated, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so this creator of theirs was separated from them.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe let's maybe tackle that story from that particular place,
Yes.
where we look at how this separation happened. Can we do that?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe just before we get into that, let me just a little bit backtrack, if I may. So we find God created Adam from clay, right? And then out of him, he caused him to fall into sleep, and then he forms a woman, Eve, right? And the Hebrew for it is Ish, meaning the man, and Isha means the woman. So this shows that the woman is an extension of man, right? So when it moves from there, we see Adam wakes up and gives her the name, and he gives her the name Eve, right? And this has been translated, but the original name is Shava or Chava, something like that. But that is the name. What is the name? But when you go back to the Hebrew of it, the name Shava has got Hay in it.
Okay.
And the Hay means life-giving. And you remember the name of God has got a Hay in it, which means life-giving. So the woman has got a bit of God in her because of the life-giving aspect of it. So now, when we start moving forward, now we see, as you mentioned, that they had communion with God, very close communion. They could speak to God. God would visit them. It says he came at the cool of the day, to check on them. Now, there comes the serpent. But one question that really boggles my mind is, this serpent speaks.
I've heard people raise that question.
How is it that the serpent can speak?
Yeah.
Maybe you can assist on that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a good one, because I've also come across that question, quite some time. And
Yeah.
when I've been looking into it, it almost looks like the serpent that we're dealing with is not probably the same as the serpent that we see. I could
Yes.
be wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's some basis for why I think this. I think linguistics are a very important thing to explain, things that are distant from us. You explain the issue with, where the name woman comes from, because she's got life-giving,
Yes.
capabilities. Another example is, I've heard someone say that the word woman actually comes from woman, which has got the extension, that man extension, sort of extension from a man, but also womb, which is, for creation purposes. So I think when you tie things to the linguistics, you start to get a broader context of what was the imagination of the people when they identified a particular thing. So with that one, if you look at the word that is used for this serpent that, presented itself to Eve and then later to Adam, the Hebrew word there is nahash.
Nahash, okay.
Nahash. Now, nahash, yes, could be translated as serpent, right?
Yeah.
But it could also be translated as like a diviner, some people even translate it to mean something like something from the spiritual realm.
Oh, right. I get you.
The word nahash also, I think, is a word that could, I speak under correction, but could also be a word that is used for bronze as well.
Okay, bronze.
Yeah, something that shines.
Okay.
Right?
All
yeah,
right.
I think it's something that shines.
Yes.
And maybe just for further context on this, right? If you look at, for example, I think it's Numbers.
Okay.
In the book of Numbers, there's actually a verse there. I think it could be number 7, right? Yeah, we can check that. But in Numbers, but you know the story of the Israelites when they had just gotten out of Egypt and they were there in the wilderness. And then it says that, they were complaining to God, and all of that.
Yes.
And then it says that God was so tired of them that he sent them fiery serpents.
Yes.
The word that is used there is Hanechashim HaSeraphim.
Yo.
Tough words, eh?
Tough words.
Hanechashim HaSeraphim.
Okay.
Which in English we translate to fiery serpents.
Yes.
Right? We translate that to fiery serpents. So obviously something that is fiery, it's something that is burning. So like burning, serpents.
Yes.
Now, if you look at other scriptures, and I'll give you another example. We also, I think, in our, maybe before I go there, in our Christian understanding, we all have this story that we've sort of inherited, which is not explicitly stated in the Bible, but that says that Satan was he was an angel, right? Before wickedness was found in him, right? And he was kicked out of heaven.
Yes.
He used to be a serpent, and we have stories around how he used to be a musician and all of those things. I think there are things that culturally as Christians we've come to accept.
Yes.
But I always think it's always important to dig deeper into what the text says to get an understanding of why we believe these things.
Yes.
Right? Because some of them are not explicit, right?
Yes.
Now, when you look at Isaiah chapter 6.
Chapter 6, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isaiah says something miraculous. He says something along the lines of, and it's very poetic, woe is me, for I have seen the King. I have seen God with my own true eyes. This is what Isaiah says.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he also describes what is around God's throne.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
And he says it says around God's throne are seraphim.
Yes.
Now, the other word for seraphim, or the translation of the word seraphim, is actually the burning ones or the shining ones.
All right.
Right?
All right.
So, yeah.
And it's very interesting what you're mentioning, because you're talking about the seraphims, which, to my understanding, this sounds like the angels, isn't it?
A lot of people have come to understand the word seraphim to mean angels, but in actual fact, the word that we now take as angel is it's not a word to describe a creature, right? It's not like how you would look at a dog and you would say that thing is a dog and that is its name. So the word angel actually comes from a Greek word angelos, right? And that Greek word was translated from a Hebrew word malak. Right?
Yeah.
And that word, malak, is actually just a word for messenger.
Oh.
So when you speak about messenger, you're basically defining what the creature does. You're not saying what the creature is.
Oh, yes. Yes,
so,
I get you.
Yeah, so it is quite possible that, let's say a seraphim could have been a messenger.
Yes. And sometimes the Bible will call them the creatures.
The creatures.
Yes, I remember in the book of Revelations, it says, whenever the creatures give thanks and praise to the Lord, the elders took out their crowns, you know. And it's interesting because there are actually 4 classes. There is the seraphims, there's the cherubims, there is the ophanims, there is the I'm forgetting the other name that I will refer to my notes, if I can quickly refer to my notes. I have it here. Okay. Yeah, so there are the cherubims, there are the seraphims, the ophanims, and the angels of power and angels of government.
Okay.
Then out above those, there is
so would those last ones be, let's say, principalities, or princes?
I would think so. But above this group, then you got the archangels. That's where you have the Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. So I was just coming in to bring in perspective on the cherubims that we were talking about, right?
Yeah. And the seraphim.
And the seraphim. No, you're talking the seraphim.
So also for me, what was interesting, right? And again, like I could be wrong, but just studying the text.
Yes.
Also, when you go to Revelation 12. We see a vision that John has in Revelation 12, and he says he saw a dragon, you know, and he calls it a fiery red dragon. And he says of this dragon that this dragon is that serpent of old, right, who is also known as the devil. Right?
And the serpent of old is the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
I would believe it's the serpent in the Garden of Eden, right?
Yeah.
Who is also the devil,
yes.
right? Now, when you piece together these things, so you and you know, obviously taking into account the culture of the times, you know, and I'll come to that shortly.
Yes.
But when you take into account that Satan in Revelation at the very end, he's described as a dragon, and he's also described as the serpent of old. And one thing I think, if I just imagine what a dragon would look like, it would be probably something that has scales, you know, and those scales would be like shiny, you know, because you know, like that's not what I imagine, you know, that there'd be shiny scales and all of that, and possibly when the light reflects on this, you know, shiny scaled creature, which looks serpentine in nature, you know, because I imagine a dragon would look serpentine or reptilian in nature. You know, it would reflect light. And so someone would describe it, who has no other words to describe this thing, as a fiery serpent, you know. So they probably use this word interchangeably, fiery serpent, fiery dragon, and that's why you would see that Revelation would refer to a dragon as being that same serpent, and that serpent being the adversary, you know, himself. Coming back just quickly to the culture of the times, right? When you study the history of the time, there was a common thread of the kings of the time being referred to as the shining ones, right? Or being referred to as the stars. You know, you would also know how, you know, Lucifer himself was called the morning star. All right? And in fact, that's actually, I think, something that ties into our story. But before I get there, Zeus also used to be referred to as the shining one. And, you know, you've heard of Yom Kippur, which is a Jewish holiday. So if you read, you know, the book of the Maccabees, which is a historical book for, you know, Jewish people, it basically speaks of a time when the Jews were oppressed by a Seleucid king. So maybe just quick history. You know Alexander the Great.
Yes, I know him.
When he died, his empire was broken up into 4 kingdoms. One of them was in Egypt by the Ptolemies, which was the Ptolemaic dynasty, and then in Greece, that would have been the Seleucid kingdom. So one of the descendants of that Seleucid lineage was a guy called Epiphanes Antiochus. Now the word Epiphanes means the shining one. So he named himself. So there's something called, and I might get my words mixed up, but it's something of the form of theophoric names. Like I think it's called theophoric names, which is back in the day, a lot of people would have been named for the god that they worshipped. Right? And you would see it even with the people in the Old Testament. Elijah, he was named for God. His god was Yahweh. So it would be, let's say Yah. So the short form of Yahweh was Yah. So his name would have been Eliyahu, Eliyah. So that's also a theophoric name. I think that's the word. So even with Epiphanes Antiochus, he was also named for Zeus. So he named himself after Zeus. Now, funny enough, if you take into account the book of Daniel, I think it might be Daniel 9 or Daniel 10, what we today take as a story of, you've heard of the Antichrist,
Yes.
this coming human being, who will be empowered by the devil, and he will set his place, he will elevate himself above anything that is called God, and he will call himself God, and he will set himself up in the throne room of God, right?
Yeah.
And he will do something that is called the abomination of desolation. And
What is that?
So abomination is a word that we use today to mean something that is despicable,
Yes.
right? But in older Jewish context, it was a word very closely associated with idolatry.
All right.
All right, so
Okay.
they would interchangeably use, idolatry for abomination. God, when he would speak, he would say, what you are doing, which they would be practicing idolatry, he'd say, it is an abomination to me.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So the abomination of desolation would be an abomination that makes desolate.
Okay.
Now this guy went into the temple, the second temple,
Yes.
right, in Israel, and one of the things he did, he set up a statue of Zeus in God's temple. And he even slaughtered an animal which was considered to be a filthy animal on the altar of God, which
Sure.
was a pig.
Yeah.
You know how
Sure.
Jewish
Yeah.
people don't even eat pork because it's considered to be an unclean animal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is what this guy did. So at the time, they actually, when they saw it, they actually thought that that was the abomination of desolation that was spoken about by Daniel the prophet.
All right. I see.
Now, the point that I'm making here is if you take that concept of the shining one and all of that, and it even speaks to, I think, when you take into account Isaiah, where we actually get the word Lucifer. The word Lucifer actually comes from the word the shining one, right?
All
We can
right.
maybe go into that a bit.
Oh yeah. Let's go to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I maybe read the verse so
Absolutely.
that the audience has got
Absolutely.
context?
Yes. That would be
Yeah, I
great.
think maybe that
Okay.
might be a bit helpful. Let
Yes.
me just find it quickly. So I think, for me, when I look at all of these things, I try and, connect the dots, build a story arc that almost makes sense, either way you look at it.
And I'm on the edge of my seat, waiting
Yeah.
to hear you answer me. How is this
Serpent
snake
talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe we're getting there.
We're getting there.
All right. Good building up.
So
All
if
right.
I just read this verse, now, so
Yes.
this is Isaiah chapter 14
Yeah.
from verses 12.
Okay. All right.
It says, and this is typically the verse where we get the name which we have taken for Satan
Yes.
to be Lucifer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. This is Isaiah.
Isaiah chapter 14,
Okay.
verse 12, from
All right.
verse 12.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just stop somewhere, but I'll just say where I stopped.
All right. Okay. Perfect.
I think I'll stop at verse 15. I'll read Isaiah 14 from 12 to 15.
Yes.
So I'm reading in the New King James Version. It
Okay.
reads, how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of congregation, on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And then he says, yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Now, if we just look at some keywords that came out, we
Yeah.
read in the first verse, it says, how you are fallen from heaven,
Yes.
O Lucifer, son of the morning.
Yes.
Now, that word Lucifer is actually a word that was translated into the Vulgate Latin
Yes.
from Greek. So the Greek word there, the original Greek reading of the verse there would have been Lux Ferra, which means light bringer.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it would then say son of the morning. Now,
Yes.
even that was a translation from the Hebrew. Now, in the Hebrew, it would be Hallel, which would be shining one.
All right.
And then son of the morning would be Ben Shachar. Right?
Yes.
So the point that I'm making here is you can tell that, from this verse, that the shining one would have originally been Satan.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And you can hear also there's a point also when, Jesus in the New Testament, but I'm sure we'll cover that in later episodes, where he's referring to people sacrificing to Zeus. In fact, it was Paul speaking about people that are sacrificing to Zeus, and then he says of them, you guys are sacrificing to Satan. So when you read this, you can actually tell that this same Satan goes by different names.
Yes.
Right? And one of them we can tell from that verse that I just referred would have been, a name for Zeus, who also went by the name the Shining One. So without going too far, and also even Baal, but we can come to that later.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Him also, being, another name
Yes.
for, the adversary. And the adversary is a Greek word, is a Hebrew word that just means, Satan, or the Satan is basically just a Hebrew word that just means the adversary.
All right.
Right?
All
Yeah.
right.
So you're asking me, how is it that
Serpent can talk.
the serpent can
Yes.
talk?
Yeah.
In summary, I believe it's because it wasn't like a normal serpent, right?
Yes.
I think it was because what Eve was encountering was actually probably even a seraphim, a one of those creatures that surrounded, God's throne, that used to sing praises to God, which is probably the understanding that we have of who Satan used to be.
You are right, because if it's a seraphim, then this seraphim to be on earth has to have fallen, like what you read in Isaiah 14 verse 12, how you have fallen from heaven. So we're talking about a fallen seraphim here. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So I think that's that's what I think about, But also there's another thing as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, before I jump you, there's another thing as well, in the sense that when you look at how people in the Old Testament used to address some kings, they used to address some of those kings as though they were, angelic beings, spirit beings, and all of
Yes.
that. For example, Ezekiel 28. Yeah, but we can speak about that. Yeah.
And you see that a lot, even with the Egyptian pharaohs. Most of them, they will try to have life after death in the way that they will have statues of themselves, they will have shrines, they put themselves there, people, they worship them. So a lot of kings, they would elevate themselves to a picture of a god at that time. And this leads me to this point here, because there it says that how Lucifer is fallen from heaven, right? And we established that this serpent has to be some form of a cherubim that has fallen.
Yes, yeah.
And now he comes and talks to Eve and to Eve, yes, and twist the truth. How come does he have knowledge that this tree is a true tree of life and it's got these things? Where does he get this knowledge from if he didn't fall from heaven, where he had all this knowledge of what is happening during the creation? So it means that then we're talking about a cherubim that fell from heaven and it's got knowledge of what happens here. And this will, which will explore when we get to the next episode, the upcoming episode, where we talk about the giants, how they have fallen and they start corrupting people, teaching them things, which is the knowledge that they got from heaven. So moving on from this, the question that I've always asked myself is, where is Eden? All right, where is it located? I've asked myself this question because I'm thinking the Garden of Eden. Is the garden as big as a normal garden?
Yeah.
Like
they were just living in this
40 square meter or 30 square meter. They were living in that, and there was a tree and the river. And now, when you look at it, I believe maybe we should explore why do they use the word garden, referring to Eden. Probably the garden should be used because of the garden has got life in it and stuff. But what we see there is that where the river, the garden was, it was dry, nothing was growing, but God formed 4 rivers. We've got Gershon, Pishon, Tigris, Euphrates. So these 4 rivers, they were flowing out of Eden. But this comes to my reasoning that if this was a literal garden, 4 rivers cannot flow out of one garden. It has to be huge, probably the size of Africa. Then you have 4 rivers flowing out, but it was still referred to as a garden. So it has to be
because
a
it
big
was
space,
fruitful, probably
very fruitful and a big space. And we're talking about big rivers here. In South Africa, we'll talk about the Vaal River. When you have Vaal River, you need a huge space. Vaal River times 4, it has to be a huge space, right? For these other things to live and for Adam to live and this wife. So as we move on now, I'm asking myself, where is these rivers? But what we can find is the rivers that we can really locate is Euphrates and Tigris. And so we can sort of find out, okay, this probably was around the area of Turkey, the East Mesopotamia, around the area of Turkey, the area of a bit of Saudi and a bit of Iraq, you know, maybe a little bit of Iran. So we can see those rivers are somewhere there. So we'll say Eden encompass those areas, but it was not limited to those areas because we don't know where the other two rivers, Kishon and Gishon. But again, what we see when we read the book of Genesis in the story of Noah, the Bible says, before it started raining, God caused the fountains on the ground to break open. As they break open, they start, they change the whole anatomy of the land. The landscape changes because now you got new fountains bring out new rivers, right? So those that were there, either they were captured or they
collided into each other and became one big river.
One big river. So then these other two rivers could have disappeared like that, and that changes the whole our narrative of knowing where is it located. And to add in, it says Cain, after Cain killed his brother, God said to him, I'm casting you out. And he was cast to the east of Eden. And he said he was cast to the land of Nod. And when I tried
where
to
is Nod?
Exactly. I tried to check where is Nod. If you can find where is Nod, then we know where is Eden.
Oh, sure,
all right? So when we try to find where is Nod, but Nod actually means, it's a Greek word, it's actually translated from Hebrew, which actually means exile. So he was
just exiled.
To exile. He was exiled east of Eden.
You know, there's actually a funny thing. I was reading something as well. I think it's in probably Genesis 3. Which said something along the lines of the fact that, you know, even when Adam, you know, was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and obviously with Eve, that God put cherubim to the east of Eden. So probably, you know, whenever you get exiled, whenever you move further and further away from God, you move furtherly easterly, and probably the easterly direction, you know, is probably a direction, you know, that
away from
would have
God.
signified, you know, exile. So probably, I think then from that perspective, wherever it is that they were exiled towards, then probably the Garden of Eden would have been more westerly from that direction.
Exactly.
You know, just logically,
I also think so. And I speak this with not really authoritative perspective, but just based on our research and then our conclusion should be parts of Eden was Turkey, Saudi, Iran, Iraq. Those areas was parts of Eden. We cannot say it was located there. It was parts of Eden because we don't know where are these other rivers. What if Gishon is Nile? So we'll say Eden stretches all the way to Africa. So we don't know. So we can, without authoritative perspective, we can say parts of Eden was in that area of the Middle East.
And does it say that all these four rivers flowed from that particular Eden?
Yes, they flow from
So
Eden.
chances are Eden would have been at a high place.
Exactly.
Which is the mountain of God, like we're saying, which almost ties in with what we were discovering in our previous, you know, investigation around the creation story, that people lived, or these two human beings lived with God on this high place.
That's right.
Just as we wrap up, right, I'd just like to just circle back to that issue of the fall of Adam and Eve, because that's, you know, how we started the conversation, and obviously it needs to have a logical end. We went a bit into depth around who we think that serpent, you know, might have been. And we'll probably even, you know, have that conversation again later on in other episodes and all of that. But for me, what is interesting is, what then, you know, what does God do after they eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? And for me, the things that stand out is the lie that Satan told, which was a convenient lie. And one thing I've seen about how Satan lies is he lies suggestively, and he includes a bit of the truth with the lie. You know, because every good lie has got a bit of truth in it, so that you think, so that it looks credible. You know? So he had said to Eve, did God really say that of the day that you eat, you shall surely die? You know, he makes it like, did God really say that? You know, so that you can start doubting, what did God really say? You know,
I get
number one. And also for me, what was interesting is, you know, God had said that on the day you eat of the tree, you shall surely die. But Adam and Eve didn't, you know, die that day. So then, initially I then asked myself, was the devil telling the truth? But then you consider something which I think we will see deeper as we go on, right? Is remember Adam and Eve had covered themselves with leaves.
Yes.
And then when God came and saw their nakedness, it says God covered them with an animal skin.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so for me, when I read that in context of the rest of the Bible, what you can almost see there is that it looks like God sacrificed an animal. He had said, you will surely die today. Because you ate of the tree, you shall surely die today. But the only way that he could give them leeway was to kill an animal so that he could clothe them.
Sure.
Because there was no way he could clothe them with an animal skin without killing an animal. You know? But then also he gives certain judgments to each of the perpetrators that were involved. Right? To see that God is both 100% just and both 100% merciful.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
So I'm just going to highlight some main lines to each one's judgment.
Yes.
So to the serpent, and I'll come back to the serpent one just to highlight. Maybe let me just start with, Eve and then Adam, and then we'll go to the serpent.
Yes.
Although the order is, it's different to that.
All right.
So to Adam, he says, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Right? To Eve, he says, and obviously this would also apply to Eve as well, right? As she's also an Adam, like we said.
Yes, that's
last
right.
time, yes. But to Eve particularly, he said, your desire shall be for your husband, and there's, other things, around there. In pain you shall bring forth children, and all of that. But the ones that I'm most interested in is God saying, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return, which ties into the thing that we're saying around linking it to how even the other African stories essentially say that human beings were created from clay.
Yes, that's right.
So those align there. But it's what is said to the serpent for me that, carries the greatest weight in this.
Yeah.
God, the judgment that God says to the serpent is, he says, and I will put, so he says, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust, right? And there's a greater Hebrew context to this thing of eating dust, and going down on your belly, which is more poetic. But we'll go on to that later on in the other chapters. And he says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman. He's speaking to the serpent now. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now my question is, how will the serpent's head be bruised? Who is the seed of the woman? Which I think, normally would have the seed of the man. Why did God not say, say to Adam, your seed, Adam? But he says to Eve, Eve, your seed. Why the seed of Eve? Right? And I will put enmity between your seed and her seed.
Yes.
Who is the seed of the serpent? Who is the seed of the woman? I've got so many questions. It's not making sure. It's not making sense.
There's so many questions here. And I think we can touch a bit on it on our next episode.
Okay, I'd love that.
Because there is a greater explanation around this, right? And one thing that I wanted to add there, you were talking about the serpent, that he comes and put a bit of truth and had a twist on it, right? An interesting twist on it that makes you start reasoning and asking these questions. But one thing that I love what Paul said, right, in the book of Corinthians, he says, the first Adam, the first man was corruptible, right? So the devil was able. Let me just read it.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can quickly find it here. Where are we? Okay, there. So 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. Paul writes, the first Adam became a living being, and the last Adam, which is Christ, became the life-giving spirit. So the first Adam was the living being who was corruptible. The devil was able to corrupt the first Adam, and having corrupted the first Adam, the result was death, right? He was the living being. And the devil comes again to Jesus when he was fasting for 40 days, and he comes with the same trick. Give him a bit of truth, and have a twist on it, right? It says, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God," and one thing interesting is he comes with the same thing, but this time around he's got the wrong Adam. It's not the first Adam. This is the second Adam, which is spirit.
With spirit. Oh,
and this one is incorruptible, because this is not the Adam of the flesh. The flesh is corruptible, right? The flesh is vulnerable. But this Adam, second Adam, is the spirit. And the spirit is not corruptible. So he failed on that. Maybe it answers that the seed of the woman will crush your head. How is Jesus born? Was he a seed of a man? Certainly not. He was conceived supernaturally without the involvement of Joseph, who would be who was supposed to be the natural father,
the one who would provide the seed.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
but now you're saying the seed of the woman, not the seed of the
No, Maf, I think you've got me there. But anyway, it's fine. But I think in closing, Maf, thanks a lot for this conversation, and to the audience at home. Thank you for joining us on the Narrow Road podcast. If you've got any other, ideas, if you've picked up something else, it could be in the Bible, it could be from archaeology, oral history, or whatever, we'd like to hear from you. And maybe we might include some of those commentaries in our next episode. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.